First thing, we promise. It looks like I have a lot of pages, but it's really big print because I'm getting old and I can't see. I'll let John tell you folks the real work behind this accidental series and this accidental partnership. I'll tell you what drew us to it, independent of one another. The Hatfields and the McCoys. These days, most discussions in this town are blood feuds. So when we ran across a joint study by the Heritage Foundation and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, we realized that's a front page story. A closer look and other groups turned up as well. Cato, Washington Legal Foundation, the ABA, the ACLU, the Federalist Society. If these folks were sitting in here at a table tonight, they'd argue over whether it's Wednesday. But they were actually looking at similar problems. Well, then it was simply a matter of getting the story published. There was trepidation for me on that one. As most of you know, getting a story past editors can be like proving your innocence at the Salem witch trials. You will be dunked multiple times, and if you survive, then you will be burned at the stake. If you live, you get to write the story. I was waiting for the first dunking when I got an almost instantaneous okay to do it. That's when I knew I was onto something. About a day later, I learned that John had spotted the same problem out on the West Coast and was writing his own proposal. Well, we had a choice: be territory-hugging jerks and proclaim the story's sovereignty, or we could work cooperatively, really meaning we could each try to dump our work on the other one and maybe get a free trip to the other's bureau. Tonight is the first time we've been in the same time zone, so that plan didn't work for either one of us, but I wouldn't change a thing.
I do check here, Gary. When Gary and I started on this project, we each took a few moments to read the U.S. Constitution. And there we found just 3 crimes identified: treason, counterfeiting, and piracy. We were, on the one hand, impressed the Founding Fathers had the foresight to plan ahead for the onslaught of fake Gucci handbags and pirated movie downloads. But we were even more impressed by the restraint in criminal lawmaking. More recent generations of federal lawmakers have clearly had a different view. Today, there are an estimated 4,500 federal criminal laws. And while almost all these statutes were no doubt passed with good intentions, there has been a growing feeling and concern that this expansion of the federal criminal justice system is turning that system from a protector of people's security into a threat to their liberty. So we embarked on this project partly to look at the growth of that system and also to see its impact on everyday people. People such as Eddie Leroy Anderson and his son. Both of those people now have criminal records because they mistakenly wandered onto federal land from a nearby camping area looking for Indian arrowheads, which is a longtime hobby of theirs. Looking for such artifacts can be perfectly legal, but not on certain federal lands. And while the Andersons picked up a conviction that day, they did not find any arrowheads. Abner Schoenwetter, was another example, was a seafood importer who spent nearly 6 years in federal prison because of an American law that makes it a crime to import animal or plants products that are brought into the country in violation of another country's law. In this instance, the transgression involved importing undersized lobsters from Honduras. Ironically, Honduras eventually declared the lobster law invalid, but Mr. Schoenwetter still went to prison. James Lieto almost lost his check-cashing business when federal agents seized $392,000 from him as part of a fraud investigation in which he was a mere bystander. He had the misfortune of being caught in the government's vast asset forfeiture apparatus, which, in the name of crime fighting, takes in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, often from people who are never charged with a crime. After a year and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, Mr. Lieto finally got his money back. Others caught in that system haven't done nearly as well. Gary, you want to finish up?
Yep. Now, we simply want to say thank you so much to a number of people. We want to thank the foundation. Definitely, what we do here is fantastic to actually try to give journalists the energy to keep on going and covering the things that we're supposed to cover and let people know what happens in Washington has real impact on people. We'd also like to thank our colleagues who worked with us on this, Louise Rafnowski, Tom Magenti, and Jennifer Levitz. We'd also like to thank a number of the editors and the editors who would like to hide, but who have done a tremendous job working with us this year, Jesse Pesta, Matthew Rose, and Rob Guth. They did the majority of the editing, and as much as it pains me to admit it, we couldn't have done this without them. So we thank all of you, and I especially thank my wife, Helen, who's here, who's always been behind me as I've done this. Thank you all very much.